Welcome to PR After Hours, your twice weekly cocktail of business, PR, and marketing tips hosted by me, Alex Greenwood. Every week, we bring you virtual happy hours featuring business advice from entrepreneurs and leading thinkers in PR, marketing, and business. We're going to get started in just a moment, so stick with us.
Hey, it is Rick Lozano. I'm a keynote speaker, the author of Acoustic Leadership, Develop a Leadership Culture That Resonates, and a musician. And I love PR After Hours. Alex Greenwood hooks you up with some great advice to help you in your business as an entrepreneur. Listen in, PR After Hours rocks.
Last week, I had an email from a former client and colleague, kind of a both ways kind of thing. She worked with me on projects. I worked with her on her projects, and I value her opinion a lot. So when I got an email from her introducing me to a friend of hers who was going to do an event to benefit his business with a portion of proceeds going to charity, would I mind speaking to him? I said, sure, of course I will. So I soon got on a call with him and the person who's holding the event, and he's a restaurateur and is looking, of course, to get some publicity and build awareness for his business leaning into early January, February, which is the toughest months, I understand, for restaurants and bars because holidays are over, it's cold out, people are miserable, they don't want to go out, and perhaps they blew all their budget on going out in the holiday season. Well, anyway, he's having a really interesting event. I think it sounds great. I think it'd be a lot of fun to do. And he asked me, well, I'd love it if you could help me with that. Here's the thing. I'm asking you to just do your work for free. Thinking, okay, pro bono work. Well, pro bono work, if you don't know, I mean, a lot of people, when they hear pro bono, they think of attorneys working for free. In PR world, we have the same thing. Pro bono just meaning for free. And I do some of that, by the way. I work on the board of directors of a local nonprofit that helps get healthy food to hungry people. Check the show notes for a link if you'd like to donate. There you go. See, that's me doing pro bono work right there. So I listened carefully to what he wanted to do and his ideas. And of course, he did what a lot of people do when they come at me and other PR professionals looking for free work is to say, well, you know, and if this works out, we might have some more restaurant publicity work for you to do throughout the year on a paying basis. Well, I can't eat on a maybe, folks. And I also think that it's important for people to understand that while your charity event and what you're doing is certainly very valid and worthwhile, it's your charity event. It's your cause. It's not necessarily the PR professional's charity event or their charity of choice. So I had to tell him no, but I gave him two names of people who I thought might be interested, who have been known to do, one, restaurant work, and two, done charitable donations in the form of services. Just so I don't sound like a complete jerk, again, I donate, I mean, a lot of time to the board of directors of a nonprofit that helps feed people here in the community. That takes a big chunk of my time right there when I could be making money with other clients and doing other things, but I choose to do it because I believe in it and I want to do it. Problem is, I can't do that for everybody. Otherwise, I'd be a charity. I would need to have fundraisers just so I could pay my bills and so I could eat and all those things. And I'm being a little facetious, but I think you get the point. So here's the thing. If you do snag a good PR person to work with you on a charitable event or an event that, you know, gets a good chunk of change from you, you know, as a portion of the proceeds, that's great. If you get them, there's just a couple of points I want to make to you. A lot of people come at you last minute. This guy didn't. He came at me a good 30 days out, which technically to me is a little last minute to get started on something. The event itself wasn't until February, but still. So you've got to give pertinent information early on. Be ready to explain every in and out of what you're going to do, because I spent a good portion of my phone call with this gentleman just trying to identify how much time I'm going to have to put into this. It's a month-long event, kind of a Final Four event. And then the month prior to that, I would spend creating messaging, trying to reach out to news media to get them interested and involved, that kind of thing. And that's a lot of work. That's hours and hours a week for about 8 weeks is what he was looking for free. So part of that is, you know what, if I had more time to plan and I had my ducks in a row, knowing, okay, in those 2 months, I may have some extra free time, I could have thought about doing it. But I would advise you, if you're interested in trying to get a PR firm to work pro bono for you, I'd say give them 90 days minimum and then make sure you have a complete list of the things you think you'll need, how much time you think it will take, etc. The other thing too, I've worked pro bono a few times and I've had clients who didn't understand that my contacts are a huge reason why I can be successful for them, my media contacts. And if you blow off something because you're busy, like an interview, or I don't like that magazine, or I don't think that radio station, anybody listens to it, what you're doing is adding kind of insult to injury. You're not paying me, right? But you're also damaging my relationship with a contact in the media. So you've got to be right on the spot, on time, and saying yes, 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 every time your PR pro gets you an interview or a mention or even, gosh, a live shot. Be there, be ready, be helpful. Don't be grumpy about it. Keep your expectations in check. If a paying client has a pressing matter, they're going to jump to the head of the line on you. That doesn't mean that the PR pro is going to be unprofessional. For me, for example, I work quite a bit of crisis. And if the charity I work for now, if they expected me to be at a board meeting or to help out at an event, and especially since I would be one of several volunteers, it wouldn't be crucial for me to be there. If I had a crisis communication situation pop up, I ain't going to be there. I've got to go deal with my clients who are paying me and the clients who have an emergency. That's just how it's going to work. You really have to understand how the PR agency and PR pros work and their schedule and that sort of thing. I can't believe I have to say this, but I think this has happened to me once or twice. Be gracious and ask for their logo so you can put it on the program for the event or on signage, and make sure you mention the PR people when you're up there as the MC, or have the MC mention thank you to AGPR for all their help in getting media attention and for helping us exceed expectations on our turnout, that kind of thing. Don't want you to think at all that we're against doing work for charity. I have never met a PR person who has not done some charity work. The question is it realistic? Can we afford it? And are you going to be, or is that person, that organization we're working with, going to be a good partner? And the other thing too is to remember, in this case also that I'm mentioning, this gentleman, he's a restaurateur. He's doing this primarily to build business for himself, so there's ways to sweeten the pot, particularly when you realize you're doing free work that's going to partially benefit charity, but mainly benefit another business. And I'm a small business. I can't afford to do that. Virtually never ask other small businesses to give me any kind of a freebie whatsoever. Okay, well, here I am, the Scrooge, telling you about pro bono work and all that kind of thing. But please remember, I do charitable work. Most PR people I know do charitable work. They don't necessarily scream it from the rooftops because we just feel like it's part of what we do and part of what we should do to give back to our society. So I did source some tips from this in an article from Hope Beckham, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes for you. And again, never hurts to ask a PR pro or PR agency if they could help you with your charitable event. You're going to have much more luck if it really is for a charity 100% than it is if it's, well, my business is going to do this and 25% of the proceeds are going to charity. You're going to have a little less luck with that, I think, but it never hurts to ask. Okay, who has a podcast, then writes an ebook about podcasting and doesn't do an audiobook version of it? Well, not me. I've done that. In fact, I'm very excited to tell you, dear listeners, that the podcast option, my recent top-selling ebook on podcasting, my journey through 15 years as a podcaster, broadcaster, host, guest, and observer, is now an Audible audiobook. It's really, really, really exciting for me to be able to present this to you through Audible, which is available on Amazon.com, where the ebook link is as well. And in this fast listen, my experience comes to you through stories, practical tips, and advice from my hundreds of hours as a guest, producer, podcast host, and more. And the podcast option, if I say so myself, is mandatory listening for those new to podcasting, and it should be a welcome addition to veteran podcasters' library. So check out the podcast option read by yours truly, Alex Greenwood, or as they say there, the J. Alexander Greenwood, because that's my pen name, and that's a long story, which if you dig through my podcast, eventually you'll find out what that means. But the point being today, the podcast option is available now as an Audible audiobook. I've got a link in the show notes to make it easy for you. Please do me a favor, go get that audiobook. Or if audiobooks aren't your bag, there's also a link for you to get it as an ebook. Again, the podcast option. I certainly hope you will choose it. Oh, you know what that means? Looks like it's last call here at your virtual lounge for PR news, views, and interviews. We'll keep it short and sweet. Just remind you, if you like the show, there's many ways you can help us keep it going, not the least among which is to rate this podcast. Simply go to the show notes at prafterhours.com or wherever you're getting this podcast and click on the link. ratethispodcast.com/after, and it will take you to Apple Podcasts and a couple other places very easily. One click, you write your review, it's done. Can't tell you enough how important it is to get ratings on those sites so that we can build our audience and keep bringing you the kind of information you need every week for your business. Also, don't forget, if you want to sponsor the show, give us a tip in the virtual tip jar, or ask a question, there are links in the show notes. Well, I think it's time that I cleaned up and closed up for this edition of PR After Hours here on Anchor FM.